Hello and welcome to episode 5 of this audio-visual series on the biblical role of men and women. I'm going through this book called Biblical Foundations for Manhood and Womanhood, and we are working on the first chapter of this book by Wayne Grudem. And this first chapter is divided into 6 parts, and we've been doing a series on the second part called Men and Women Have Different Roles in Marriage. So this is part 3 of that. It's tough doing this in 10 minutes. In fact, I'm going to start my timer here to give me an alert in 9 minutes. So I'm concluding with the 10 points that he had given, and those are in the previous YouTubes. And in conclusion, before I get into other aspects of that chapter, in conclusion, there are dangers in distortions, and this is based upon the previous YouTube, if you watch that. There are dangers of distortion within the roles within marriage, and that's where a lot of problems arise. So the first is to understand that there are different roles for men and women. And then secondly is to be alerted to the fact that those roles can be distorted. So there's the errors of passivity, there's the errors of aggressiveness, and that can be both for the woman and the man. So for the husband, the error of passivity is that you can have a wimpy husband, that there is no leadership, there's no headship, there's no responsibility. It's just in the wimpy category. And then where it should be would be the loving, humble leadership. And then the error of aggressiveness would be where the husband is like a tyrant. And that's not biblical. So the goal is that we function biblically, the way God calls us to function. For the wife, you have the same dangers of passivity, where the wife is the doormat. Where it's like, okay, husband, whatever you say. Well, the woman is to have an intelligent input, and we're going to address this a little bit later in this YouTube, I hope, YouTube video. So the passive side of it is just being a doormat, and that's not the biblical role of a woman. The healthy perspective is being joyful, intelligent submission. And then the distortion of aggressiveness would be a usurper of leadership, of the male leadership. So the man's responsibility is to provide for and protect, and the woman's responsibility to care for the home and nurture children. And if you take time to read the book, it gets into this. It'd be nice to get into this more deeply, but I'm just don't have a lot of time to get into everything. But if we go back to Genesis 2:15, it talks about how the Lord took the man and put him in the garden to work it and to care for it, so that the man is called to be the provider. And this can have changes based upon what's going on in a relationship. That there might need to be a time where a woman pinch hits and helps out with providing. If the man is laid up or there's extraordinary circumstances. So that would have to be guided by the Holy Spirit and wisdom. But as far as the woman being submissive and to the husband's leadership, because the husband is called to be the leader and he is accountable for that leadership. But there can almost be this view that the woman is, like I said, like a doormat or just checked out, and that's not it at all. Though the woman has a great responsibility in being a part of the relationship, to be a part of bringing thoughtfulness to decisions that a husband and wife need to make. Now, ultimately, the accountability and decision rests with the man. But the woman has a responsibility, I believe, to interject and bring forth her intelligence, her wisdom, her giftings, where a husband and wife can discuss decisions, but ultimately then it rests with the man, and God holds that man accountable for his decisions. But but if we take a look at the Proverbs 31 woman, 31:10 to 31, we see a woman that is no doormat. And this is, I want men to rise up and be the leader and be accountable for it and do it in a godly, loving way. And I call for women to be submissive to their husbands in a godly manner, and that doesn't mean being a doormat. But there is a humble posture as women would do that. But that, again, that doesn't mean that you're a doormat. There's a very active role that a woman plays in the relationship. And if you look at the Proverbs 31 woman, you see it. And I could read the whole thing, and I don't know if I have enough time, but take a look at Proverbs 31:10 through 31. And I'm going to read some verbs and some action points out of it. And we can see that the Proverbs 31 woman is very active, not a doormat. She does yield unto her husband. She respects her husband. The husband is at the town's gate, is one of the leaders, and he's there because she helps him be there. She helps him be successful. She is his helpmate. But she's also very, very active. And so I want you to see, yes, I call forth the man to be the biblical leader and accountable as God calls us, but also the woman to be very active. So in the Proverbs 31 woman, she brings, she selects, she gets up, she provides food for her family, she considers, she sets out about her work vigorously. So she just doesn't set out to go about her work within the home and outside of the home, which I'm going to explain, but she does it vigorously. She sees that her trading is profitable. Wow. She opens her arms to the poor. So the woman has an extraordinary role of providing for or caring for, well, the man would be the provider typically, but the woman would have a responsibility of caring for the home, to make sure it's clean. You may not have a mansion, but at least it can be clean. So to have it neat and tidy and orderly, and so she cares for her home, and she gets up early and is vigorous about that to make sure her home is clean and orderly and cared for, and that her husband and children are also cared for. But as she gets her home in order, her arms then reach outside of the home into the community, where she's then taking care of the poor and the needy. Wow! What a role that women have. It's incredible. So, when we take a look at the roles of men and women in the Bible, I think we don't even begin to get a biblical concept of what it really means. And if we did, it's gonna revolutionize our lives. So again, she brings, she selects, she gets up, she provides food for her family, she considers, she sets out her work vigorously. She sees that her trading is profitable. She opens her arms to the poor, and she extends her hands to the needy. So her arms are stretching outside of her home into the community and meeting needs in the community. Wow! She opens her arms to the poor. She extends her hands to the needy. She makes coverings for her bed. She is clothed in fine linen and purple. And she makes linen garments and sells them. She is clothed with strength and dignity. Is that a floor mat? No. She is clothed with strength and dignity. And this is from a godly woman because of her faith in God. That's how she can have the strength that is from God and the dignity that is from God. So she speaks with wisdom. She watches over the affairs of her household. Wow, she watches over the affairs of her household. And she does not eat the bread of idleness. So, as we see here, and I can get into the role of man as provider in Timothy 5:8, 5:10, and it goes on. I had hoped to get into some objections to this, but I'll have to do that next video. But just enough to say on this video that when you think in terms of the woman as being submissive to her husband, there can be this negative cloud, and I know there are many egalitarians and even evangelical feminists and the whole non-Christian world feminists that are very antagonistic about a woman being submissive to her husband, because a lot of times there have been obviously a lot of abuses of the man to be the leader. So my call is that men would rise up to be godly leaders and be accountable to God, and that women would rise up and understand what it means to be a godly woman in the house, and the powerful role that she has, and the powerful role that the man has in being a loving father, a loving husband, and doing in a way that the father is to Jesus. Again, I had said this before, that the marriage reflects the relationship between God the Father and Jesus. That is how the marriage is supposed to look like. Jesus is not a less than or a doormat to the Father. He's God himself. So, but he yields unto the Father. So the marriage mirrors the relationship between the Father and the Son, and between Christ and the church. So these are powerful roles, and I pray that over time that God would provide discernment and reveal his heart's on this matter, that men would rise up to this extraordinary role of being the leader in a godly manner, and that women would rise up and look at the Proverbs woman and study it, and it's very active, and it's very powerful, and it's very significant, with significant impact on her family and the needy outside of her family. So we're out of time. So next time I will begin on some egalitarian objections to male headship, where the author addresses 3 of them, and I will work on trying to digest and share what the author says about that. So thanks for joining, and until next time, see you then.